We're here to get actionable insights from leaders to manage IT remote infrastructure and to discuss challenges in managing IT remote sites and how those remote sites become critical in the supply chain. I'm here with Bob Rideout. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Good to be with you.
Great to have you here. Thank you. Maybe we start out by telling me a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your background, and then we'll jump into some other questions as we go.
Oh, good. My name is Bob Rideout, as you said, and probably my biggest claim to fame, I was with DuPont for 39 years, including the last 10 as a corporate CIO. I had assignments in manufacturing and also sales and marketing. And I was the CIO of a lot of the different business units. And then the last 10 years as a global CIO.
And as a former CIO, what kind of problems kept you up at night? What were some things that hit your radar in regards to uptime and managing remote IT sites?
Well, one that hits me very much in particular is one Labor Day. I had just arrived at our friend's beach house, and I get a call from the president of our automotive finishes business, which was a $5 or $6 billion business, and he said, "Your IT systems have shut down my business in Europe." And
not the call that you want to get.
Not the call you want to get. And so obviously, I get on the phone and see what's going on, and our manufacturing systems are working great. Our customer service systems are working great. Everything was working great, except the consolidated contract warehouse. So even though everything was working great, we could not ship. So obviously we sent people over to the warehouse and found out it had a pretty shaky infrastructure at the warehouse of power and communications and those kinds of things. And we left people there. IT people just started working there for a while until we got that warehouse stable. And shipments went out, and I had I renewed my friendship with the business president of our automotive finishes business.
Where remote IT sites often not given the same level of attention, considering how close they are to the customer transaction?
Because I think they're really far from the headquarters and really far from the large data centers. And there are so many of them, and they're so small. And they're in many cases unsophisticated and unmanned. It's difficult.
So there's obviously a customer impact, there's a financial impact, outages that impact business processes, a weak link problem, right? And so managing the weak links is critical in this process.
Especially the last link, and the remote site is frequently the last link of the supply chain. And in that particular case, we've taken out so much inventory, and our customers have taken out so much inventory that we just there's no buffer anymore. So when you're supposed to ship, you have to ship. There's a reason that we established that remote site. There's a purpose to it. And we've got to be able to ensure that that purpose is served. So for example, in a remote warehouse, we're probably trying to get product closer to our customers so that our customers then can drive their supply chains inside their operations to be more productive. And then that puts a real stress on us because we have to ensure those remote sites are operational. Supply chains are continuing to get more and more streamlined. And so they run faster, and they take with far less inventory. And frequently it means moving the inventory closer to our customers, which involves establishing a lot of remote sites. and then how then those remote sites become critical links in the supply chain. And they have to be monitored just as if they were data centers. Number one would be, you've always got to serve the customer. And if we ever shut down a customer, it's a really big deal. You'd never want to do that. And then secondly, the financial metrics. We want to make sure we keep shipments flowing. And of course, around month end, quarter end, it's always going to be a lot of stress. That's when things usually break. We never want them breaking at that time. Well, I personally think that the IT organization, the IT operations organization, needs to take accountability of the remote sites. I just saw a Gartner survey that said about half of companies manage remote sites with the facilities folks and the other half with IT. And I think IT operations really needs it, because this is part of the IT accountability throughout the supply chain. And secondly, I think as far as other executives are concerned, is when we streamline our supply chains and we take out a lot of inventory, we're saving millions. And we're also taking out a buffer. So we need to spend thousands on monitoring to protect the millions that we've taken out in inventory.
When we think about uptime, most people put in that category large data centers.
Mhm.
However, companies that have a large amount of remote sites also have smaller IT footprints, such as manufacturing, healthcare clinics, retailer, banking, and so forth. How is uptime viewed for those companies? How critical is it? And how are some of the common factors that lead to the downtime for some of these sites? How are they managed?
Well, I think you're exactly right. There's a lot of sophisticated tools that measure uptime inside a data center, but that really isn't good enough. We've got to measure the uptime end to end of a business process. So in supply chain, we need to measure uptime from the time we have ingredients arrive at our plant sites, through manufacturing, through customer service, warehousing, and all the way through shipping. And frequently we're going to be involving contract or remote sites for shipping, and maybe some contract manufacturing. And so we need to insist that there's monitoring at those sites.
There's a challenge of monitoring hundreds of sites at scale to be more proactive versus reactive. What are some ways to be able to manage that?
Well, in products like Sentry, we can start to see when servers are trending toward a problem and not having a problem. And that's crucial. So we can be sending somebody out or fix something before it breaks. That's the ultimate. That's what you really want to do. Don't wait for it to break and then fix it. When it starts to trend toward a failure, there's time to react and respond.
Bob, do you see a standard today for managing remote sites? And as a CIO, how would you recommend that other executives look at creating standards around remote monitoring?
I think today there's really not an industry standard. And so certainly, what I would recommend is establish a standard for your company. And then in our case, I would say that when we contract or build for a remote site, that we ensure it's got the redundancy of power and communication lines and those types of things. And then operationally, we need to ensure we have proper monitoring. So there's not going to be any IT people there. So we need to know what's going on. And when we have an outage of power, or we're starting to trend toward an outage in telecom or in say, a server outage, we need to know about it. So something has to create an alert for us. We need to recognize that remote sites are a key link in our supply chains. And consequently, there has to be a focus on these remote sites. We have to sign accountability, and then we have to put a toolkit in place to monitor their uptime and reliability. I don't think they really do. I don't think the C-suite distinguishes between remote IT operations and IT operations. Some of the examples I've talked about are, they're not successful if the last link of the supply chain isn't working, and that's the remote operation. But that creates failure across the entire supply chain. So it's incumbent that we measure and monitor the remote sites for the credibility and the reputation and the business impact that IT has on the rest of the company. Step one is, how well are we serving our customers? And what are the financial implications of how well we're serving our customers? And that's really the key measure of IT and of the way we keep up these remote sites. What's crucial is what's important to your business. And like in a manufacturing business, it's crucial. I think customer shipments, on-time customer shipments, is probably the most critical metric. And in banking, it's probably something different. And healthcare would be something different. So I think initially, each business needs to establish just a few critical business-focused metrics for the remote sites and track those, and then enable success, enable perfection. We're after perfection in this. You know, we're not after being up 95% of the time, because that means 5% of the time we're not shipping. We want to be up 100% of the time. And that's the idea of this, the proactive aspect of server failure, avoid server failures, those kinds of things. It's a box, except it's black, and it's about that color, about that size. And it goes up on a wall inside of a data closet or any remote site where there's no IT people available, and it monitors power, it monitors humidity, it monitors, there's a camera, so we know who enters and who exits. And so basically it's a call home if there's an exception.
Mm-hmm.
And then what that does is, if you think about like a Home Depot store, if all the computers go down, the cash registers don't work. The idea is to be very proactive in all these remote areas that don't have any IT staff there.
Yep. So talk about that a little bit. So there's a challenge of monitoring hundreds of sites at scale to be more proactive versus reactive. What are some ways to be able to manage that?
Well, in products like Sentry, we can start to see when servers are trending toward a problem and not having a problem. And that's crucial. So we can be sending somebody out or fix something before it breaks. That's the ultimate. That's what you really want to do. Don't wait for it to break and then fix it. Secondly, I think as far as other executives are concerned, is when we streamline our supply chains and we take out a lot of inventory, we're saving millions. And we're also taking out a buffer. So we need to spend thousands on monitoring to protect the millions that we've taken out in inventory.
And all of this rolls up into this concept of IT visibility and being able to see what might be going down at any given time. How do company M&A or additional physical space acquisition impact IT visibility?
That's a great question. Frequently, certainly at DuPont, we would bring on many small companies as kind of a bolt-on acquisition, as they had some capability or access to a market or something like that. And then all of a sudden, being in a large company introduced such tremendous change on them and their operations. So for example, they might be working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and all of a sudden they get in a big company and there's a lot more demand for their services or their capabilities, and they have to go to 24/7, and they're not accustomed to that. And so we have to add a lot of capability. We've got to help them overcome that, whether it's move a few folks in there for a while that are accustomed to 24/7 operations, and also again provide the right equipment and monitoring systems.